Hi, I'm Peter Reinhardt, and we're on Pizza Talk, presented by Pizza Quest. And today I'm here with Dan Richer of Razza. Now, Dan, I'm going to let you pronounce the full name of Razza, because every time I look it up, everyone always just calls it Razza, but it's really more than Razza. How do you say it?
Just Razza's good.
Nobody uses the second part, the artigione or whatever it is that you got there. But is that is that just Italian for artisan pizza or what?
That's it.
All right. Well, everyone just knows it as Razza, and everywhere I go, people just always ask me this one question: have you been to Razza yet? And I haven't, because the one time that I had a chance to get up there, we got too late of a start, and by the time we called, the lines were out the door and the wait was too long, and we said, okay, we'll do it the next time. And then, of course, we're all shut down, and I'm down in North Carolina, and you're up in New Jersey. In fact, speaking of New Jersey, a lot of people who've never been there know about you because Pete Wells, a couple of years ago in the New York Times, wrote that the best New York pizza is now found in New Jersey. How did that article impact your business?
It was pretty big impact.
It had to be, right? I mean, the New York Times is kind of like it's almost like a Michelin 3-star,
Yeah. We started the restaurant in 2012, and it was a very slow start for about 4.5 years until that came out. And it was difficult to even make it through those 4 years. We have a very small restaurant, and as you know, with pizza, it's a pretty low price point comparatively. So with 40 seats and minimal takeout, it was difficult to make it. And then that review came along, and then it's the opposite issue. Nobody can get in.
Right.
And
now people are mad at you because they can't get in.
Yeah.
See, it's a good thing, bad thing kind of situation, but mostly a good thing, I would think, because now at least you don't have to worry about being undiscovered.
Yes. Yeah. And it wasn't about the, trying to be discovered or anything. I'm not looking for fame and fortune or anything. I just want to get my staff paid.
Right.
And that's the issue with a slow restaurant. Your staff is not going to be able to get paid. And that's the name of the game. It really is. Make the team happy.
Back to that, because now we've got a new, this crisis situation, and you are still going and keeping your, people working. But let's work up to that, because I'd like to hear a little bit about those early years, especially since you had that time before you were getting slammed to really work on your vision and to perfect, in a sense, your craft. Can you tell us a little bit about how that all unfolded for you?
Yeah, well, I started making pizza in 2003, and I owned another restaurant before this for 10 years. And that's where I really honed the craft. It's a continuous, I'm still honing. Don't get me wrong.
Never ends, right?
It never ends. I still feel like I'm at the beginning, which is great. That's what drives me, that and my team. Really trying to learn something new every single day. And I'm always tinkering, always like completely reinventing it.
Mm-hmm.
And that it keeps it fresh. It keeps it new, keeps it exciting for me, trying something new, whether it's a new flour or, a new technique on the oven, or being creative with some new ingredients. It's really keeps it very interesting.
It's not like you kind of spent a few years dialing it in on your ideal recipe or formula, and then you've just been knocking it out. You're still continuing to evolve your pizzas. Is that right?
Yeah. So I didn't have an ideal formula, but I had an ideal set of characteristics in the pizza that I'm looking for. So when I was really starting to get better at it, it's because I came up with a list of about 40 something points about pizza that I'm looking for in my ideal pizza. And how we get there is irrelevant, as long as the final product comes out with these lists, with all of these 40 characteristics about the pizza.
Do you have that like on a chart or a poster somewhere, or
we have a packet?
Memorize that. You have a packet.
It's about 6 pages.
Sounds like Jethro Gibbs, like rules of being an NCIS agent or something like that.
Yeah, honestly, it's a set of blueprints, because if you're a home builder, right, it doesn't matter your techniques and your materials, right? if you don't know what you're looking to build, it's not going to be great, right?
Right.
It's a
Yeah.
shot in the dark, because you can give the same people the same ingredients and teach them really high level techniques. But if you don't know what you're shooting for, how are you going to get there?
Can you talk a little bit about what some of those 40 points are?
Sir. So the first page is really the dimensions. Okay. It's the height of the crust. You know, a lot of times you'll see pizza makers, and over time their crust gets a little bit bigger as they start to understand fermentation, to show off their, how good their crumb is.
Uh,
Uh, but honestly, things change. We're making so many pizzas every day, day in and day out, over a long period of time. Things can change if you don't have a way to rein it in, to say, okay, this is the height of our crust. This is what it should be. It's everything from the dimensions to the build of the pizza, how much cheese is supposed to be on there, what the cheese is supposed to look like when it's finished baking. Should it be like ours is supposed to be fully melted, but still areas of distinct cheese, and certain areas that have melted into the sauce, so it creates that like rosy pink area where it's not quite cheese, it's not quite sauce, it's that in between where it's melted together. The cheese should have gentle areas of browning on it from caramelization. Um, the sauce has about 9 different points on it alone, from the sweetness, the acidity, whether there's seeds and skins in the sauce, the way the sauce reduces. One of my biggest pet peeves is over reduced sauce. So when sauce has too low of a moisture content, or it's been baked too long, it gets that like pasty and acidic characteristics that is just not my ideal sauce. Should
right.
be velvety, should have a gloss on it, like a glimmer.
But in
Yeah,
addition
I
to
mean,
your
there's
basic
so
tomato
many.
sauce, you do, aside from the basic pizza sauce, you also do it like a New Jersey tomato sauce as well, right?
Yeah, we usually have 2 to 3 different tomato sauces in the restaurant at any one time. Whether it's a different tomato, something that tells a story of time and place, right? So our basic tomato, we do a tomato tasting every year where we
Cool. Yes.
evaluate on a double blind, because tomatoes are an agricultural product, right? And to buy our tomatoes based on a location like San Marzano or California, or based on a label, that's not how we evaluate products. We evaluate based on the actual merits of the product. And tomatoes are an agricultural product, so you will see variation um, throughout the years and from season to season. So if we're not tasting constantly,
You find yourself actually changing brands or types of tomatoes within a brand uh, from year to year? Do you see that much differentiation?
we have it pretty dialed in right now. But yeah, I've definitely changed throughout the years, without a doubt. Um,
Yeah. Well, let's go back then. So, I mean, you didn't just sort of wake up one morning and figure all this out. You had a restaurant before Razza. How did you get into it in the beginning? Did you have any formal training, or did you kind of like, or did you go the apprentice route, or what?
no, I graduated college, flew to Italy, traveled all over the country, tasted the best food I've ever tasted. With all the Italian restaurants that we have in New Jersey, I never tasted real Italian food. And I love the regionality of it. I love the simplicity of it. And it was a plate of pasta, handmade pasta with tomato sauce that really just blew my mind. And I wanted to know why. And it was that question that led me to start visiting farmers markets to find out about ingredients, and reading books about technique, and traveling all over Italy many, many, many times, just to really taste it and to have those flavors and tastes in my bank, in my memory. And
Going to
then
Italy was like your aha moment, then, in a way.
yeah, yeah, and then I bought a failing restaurant in 2006. It's the only thing I could afford. I knew the owners. They said, "Here, we'll sell it to you for very inexpensive comparatively."
That wasn't the restaurant where Big Night was filmed, right? It sounds like
That's down here, actually.
you would never were at that one, or you would have had some Italian food at least, in
Yeah,
Jersey. Yeah.
yeah.
But
And it
but how
happened to have two wood-fired ovens.
were you able to save that restaurant?
Yeah, yeah,
Oh, yeah,
yeah. And I sold it in 2015. So a couple
still
years
going.
after I started Razza, I was running between the two restaurants. It wasn't making me happy. Financially, it was great, but I believed in Razza, and it was struggling for those 4 years. So I sold the successful one and really planted roots and focused every single day.
Was that first restaurant a more general Italian menu or what?
Yeah, it was definitely pizza specific, but there were definitely more menu items than Razza. We had a little bit bigger of a kitchen. We had two wood-fired ovens, which gives you a little bit more flexibility than just having one. But because we only had the one wood-fired oven, because we have such a small kitchen, we have a very small mixer. It forces us to be creative within those parameters of what we're working with, and that's a beautiful thing.
So basically, you were able to put all your focus then on Razza at about what, 5, 7 years ago, and now it's keeping you busy.
Very.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we're focused really growing inward rather than outward, learning every day, and really teaching the real skills of fermentation and pizza making in general.
Well, again, it's like your food sensibility or philosophy seems to have also evolved, or I mean, and it's also intuitive. I mean, you're coming at it, I guess, what we might call the artisan spirit, but it's not something that everybody just intuitively gets. How did that happen for you, and at what point did you begin to like really dial in on what makes Razza so unique and so special, and it has allowed it, on Pizza Coast, we really talk about a lot the places that have broken from the pack, that are doing more than just good pizza, but are doing something memorable. And
Yeah.
somewhere along the line, you broke through to that. Yeah. But how did you come to that point?
So two things. One, I never wanted to create a product that emulates someone else. I wanted to create a product that I loved, that evoked my philosophy on things. So I never was into the 00 flour or Neapolitan pizza or a specific style. I wanted to defy style. I just wanted to create really delicious pizza for people to thoroughly enjoy. Defying style. I didn't want to emulate certain characteristics. That's why I wrote my own rule book with that list, because I wanted specific characteristics, and those characteristics are pulled just out of the love for pizza and really thinking about every bite of pizza that I've ever taken. Anytime I would be at a restaurant, I'd think to myself, what do I love about this? What do I not love about it? And that's what really made the characteristics come to life. But also I studied at Rutgers. I started my college career at an agricultural school because it's the only college I got into. I didn't want to have anything to do with agriculture, but after I graduated, I flew to Italy, tasted this great food, and I started visiting farmers markets. And I could actually have great conversations with farmers because I have this background in agriculture. So
great. So you started connecting the dots,
and it's pretty easy to connect the dots when you have a field grown organic peak season tomato and you bite into it, and seeing the difference between that and a tomato coming out of Mexico in January, right? It's pretty obvious which tastes better. And that's what makes really great food, is ingredients and technique.
Well, you found a way to kind of take all of these ideas and put them together and really focus them through pizza. We're going to take a little break here, but when I come back with you, I want to talk about what some of those things are. Let's talk about some specific choices you've made, pizzas that you're making, and especially I'd like to talk with you about the way you ferment your dough, because we have a panel of pizza yodis that we've been talking a lot about yeast fermentation. And I know that you are doing primarily natural leaven fermentation, of which more and more pizzerias are moving in that direction, but you're really kind of in front of the wave on that. So let's come back and explore all of those things. We're with Dan Richer of Razza in New Jersey. one of the, I would have to say, now recognized nationally as one of the great restaurants. Not just it's a pizzeria, but really now a pizzeria is known as a restaurant, and it really is up there. And we want to hear more about it when we come back. We're on Pizza Talk, presented by Pizza Quest. I'm going to take a moment to thank Forno Bravo for making all of this possible. We've been working together with Forno Bravo for 10 years now, since we started Pizza Quest, and it wouldn't be possible without their support, but also without their ovens. They make incredible ovens. All of the Pizza Quest team members have Forno Bravo ovens at home, and if you're looking for one, whether for work and professional use or for the home, check out their catalog at fornobravo.com and get inspired. I'm Peter Reinhardt. We're on Pizza Talk, presented by Pizza Quest, and we're going to continue our conversation with Dan Richer of Razza in Jersey City, New Jersey, one of the great pizzerias, not only in the United States, I'll say now, in the world. And we're going to try to find out a little bit more about why it has attained that status. When we last left off, then we were talking about your own journey and the ethic and your experiences in Italy, which, by the way, have you been back to Italy, since your initial visits to kind of refresh and see if anything's evolved over there that's affecting the way you're doing pizzas now?
Yeah, I was there twice last year, and I try to go back as frequently as possible because I just love it. I love being there.
So it's kind of like a continuing pilgrimage for you to go there and get renewed and refreshed with new ideas.
Yeah, and just to eat delicious food, really.
Exactly. Well, yeah, that's a good reason to go. That's enough of a reason to go. Well, so we know that the pizzas themselves, and in that original New York Times review, Pete Wells talked about the fact that some pizzas really nail the crust and some really nail the topping. And what he loved about Razza was that you're on top of both of those. You've got phenomenal crust, and you've got again, ongoing evolving ideas for the toppings, and you're working with locally sourced ingredients, and you're finding hazelnuts from Rutgers, and you're getting locally produced buffalo mozzarella, and all of that. That's all good. But I want to talk about dough before we talk about the tops. And you are, among the leaders of the natural fermentation movement. We've talked to a few other people that do that, including Anthony Mangieri at Una Pizza Napoletana, who has a different style of dough altogether from you, but he's also doing it with natural fermentation. How did you decide to kind of move there? And did you start in that direction with wild yeast and natural, or were you starting with commercial yeast and then sort of moved into that later?
Yeah, I definitely started with commercial yeast, as I think pretty much everybody does. You have to crawl before you can walk.
Yeah.
But it was my visits in maybe 2006 to Anthony's place in New York that the aromas of his crust were just ethereal. And I wanted to know why. Again, I just wanted to know why. And that's when I started really studying bread making. And honestly, I probably have told you this before, but my first year in business, one of my guests at the first restaurant gave me your book, Bread Baker's Apprentice, because my pizza was so bad. He's like, you should probably learn something about fermentation. So those two things led me to really start studying bread making. And it was overwhelming at the beginning. So many terms, and just, it's so difficult to grasp when somebody's not standing there next to you teaching you the ways.
It's simple, and yet it's not so simple if it's new to you, and then eventually it all becomes sort of like the clouds lift and you realize, hey, this all makes sense.
Yeah, definitely.
So when you started out, did you start doing like with pre-ferments and some poolishes and sponges, or
I jumped right in.
Went right into wild yeast?
Yeah. After years making a straight dough, I skipped the poolish and biga, yeasted pre-ferments, and went right to natural. I bought a starter on the internet, one of the ones from the island of Ischia.
Oh yeah,
that
part of that Dr. Ed Wood's International Sourdoughs?
I feel like that was the only sourdough book on the market.
Wow, yeah, it really was great for a lot of people. Yeah.
Yeah.
You got one of his. You got the particular one that was started in Ischia, right?
Yeah.
So that
The Ischia
makes
starter.
fit right in with what you were trying to do. Do you think that one of the questions people ask me is when you buy a starter from some place like that, like you get a Russian starter or an Alaskan starter or Ischia starter, do they eventually become a Jersey City starter, or have they retained some of those flavors, the original flavors that from the beginning?
I think that a little bit of both, probably. I think what you feed it definitely has a major impact on the flavors, and also how you use it uh, has a big impact on the flavors that you extract out of it. But I only used that one for a few months, and I felt like I needed to be closer to the product. I wanted full control over the yeasts that we were using, and I wanted it to be more of our product. So I had some wheat grown for me out in Western New Jersey. I milled it by hand,
Wow.
one of those hand crank mills,
Yeah.
um, and cultivated the wild yeast that lives on the outside of it, and that's what we've been using since then. And that was probably
And you guys tell
2007.
the difference in flavor profile from that starter and the bacteria that it brought in versus that original Ischia starter? I mean, do you?
Honestly, in the first year of baking, you don't know, right? You don't even know how to use it. You don't
Right.
know, the right feeding schedule for you, and what fits with your schedule, because that's a big thing. Even
Yeah.
when to use it. You know, we maybe 5 years ago or so, we switched from using what was fed the night before to using um, the freshly fed starter, right?
Oh,
So your feeding schedule has a major impact on the flavors and textures and how much acidity is in your pizza.
right. So again, as in terms of sort of this never-ending learning process and learning curve that you've been on, what are some of the key takeaways that help to evolve your rules of sort of the targeted perfect pizza?
There's too many. It's
Oh,
too
when you
much.
talk about acidity, for instance, are you going to a less acidic pizza dough now, or more acidic?
Yeah, I definitely want less acidity. I want it to be there, but I don't want it to hit you over the head. We're looking for um, definitely milky, sweet, but
Mhm.
deep aromas. Um, and you should know that it's different and that it's natural fermentation. But too much acidity is not a good thing from a flavor standpoint, but also from a caramelization standpoint. If there's too much acidity in it, um, if it's over fermented, you're not going to get the crust coloration that we're looking for in pizza.
That's a good point. Yeah, and a lot of people don't even think about that part of it. They just some people, especially if they're really into sourdough, they want to know how can I make my starter more sour, and other
Yeah.
people are going, how can I tame it a little bit? How can I get the more well-rounded flavors? And you're not just making one dough, right? You're making any on a given night. You could be making as many as three different doughs, correct?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so let's talk about that a little bit. Like, why do you make three different doughs, and what are some of those differences?
Out of necessity, because our restaurant is so small
Oh
that
yeah.
we don't have a dedicated spot for our mixer. Our mixer is very, very small. It actually tucks underneath our oven, because there's just no space for it. So
Is it like a
because
20-quart mixer or something like that?
the 25 kilo mixer, it's like one of those little Neapolitan mixers. It's a single speed mixer,
Is it a
right?
spiral or
Spiral.
fork? Spiral. Okay.
Yeah. Um, it's tiny,
Mhm.
right? So because it's so small, we can only fit so much dough in there. So it gives us 3 to 4 different opportunities to learn about our dough every single day, because we have to make multiple batches.
Right. So when a person comes in and gets their pizza, do they know which crust, or are there certain pizzas that are designated to go with a particular dough, or is it you get what I give you?
You get what you get.
Wow.
Uh, and we're talking about minuscule differences. And it's usually about uh, maintaining our schedule. right? So we'll have one dough for the beginning of the night that's moving a little faster. So we might increase the dough temperature a little bit to make it a little bit more active and move on the faster side. While as the last dough that we make will be 100% natural fermentation. So it gives us a bigger window of time that we can use it. And it's moving a little bit slower than one with, a small amount of commercial yeast or one that has a higher dough temperature.
Do your doughs ever go in the refrigerator, or is it all floor fermentation?
They do. For years, we were doing same day doughs, which are great. The flavors are absolutely incredible. But I wanted to change it. It seems that as soon as we nail a dough formula, then I change it. Whether it's I change the flour or I change whether it's same day or overnight.
Yeah.
But at this point, we have an arsenal of dough formulas that work and they're all very similar but subtly different.
Do you keep tasting notes on all of these and sort of chart those over time?
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, I love the fact that you're doing that. For you, it's as much about the learning experience. And like here, you get 3 doughs. That gives you 3 new opportunities each day to analyze and kind of push your own knowledge base. And that's so rare and impressive that you do that. And maybe that's one of the factors, because we're always, again, what are the differences between the good and the very good places? And you're doing something that hardly anybody's doing, which is you're not ever standing pat.
Yeah. I am definitely a glutton for punishment. I like it, but it keeps me motivated, because if I'm not there, feeling it, touching it, tasting it, and using that as opportunities to teach my staff, because you can teach anybody how to follow a recipe, right?
Yeah.
But we want to teach real skills. We want them to get really a deep understanding of fermentation and bread baking and pizza making. And there are so many opportunities every day to teach, because it's always a little bit different. It's not just following a schedule or following a formula.
That kind of falls in line with what we talked about with Rob DiNapoli and also our Pizza Yotis about these hands. It's about, that's really, in the end, the difference between the artisan and the worker bee, is that you're developing the feel. And it sounds like that's what you're training your staff to be able to do and carry on. Even, does that mean that they can carry on even when you're not present?
I think there are a handful of my guys that could open up really great pizzerias right now, and be very successful making incredible products.
And again, as you get deeper into it and get older yourself, part of your legacy will be the people that have been able to spin off and say, this was the mother house for me.
Yeah, totally.
That gives you a lot of satisfaction to think about that.
Huge
And that's another hallmark, I think, of the people who I'm sort of fascinated with, who we're calling the Yodas of pizza, because part of it is the sense of mentoring is a big part of their personal mission. It's not just about a successful restaurant, but it's about planning for the future and passing something on from generation to generation.
Yeah, because I struggle with the fact that our product is so short-lived, right? Mm-hmm. Done all this studying and we're doing it every day so much, but it's gone in a moment, right? As soon as it comes out of the oven and is consumed, the memories last. But you look at like a master woodworker has a product that he can look at for the rest of his life. And for me, we don't get that. It's just the memories and the people that we touch that's how it lives on.
Well, cooking really is more of a performance art than it is a durable, art like painting or woodworking and things like that. But performance art is still art. And I think it sounds like from your description of kind of what you're trying to achieve. So before we move on to the topics, I want to finish one part of this dough fermentation. From what I heard, you said some of your doughs are using a little bit of commercial yeast to kind of move them along faster. Others, you're giving them more time with only the starter or the natural leavening. And both of them are working. Your customers are loving it either way, correct?
Yeah. And honestly, it's not just about having the dough move faster, because we can have it move faster by increasing the temperature, right? but the commercial yeast in a very, very minuscule amount leads to a better texture, in my opinion.
That's, I think, a really interesting point. And I'd like to, maybe we'll talk about it a little bit here, but then we're going to bring you back and have you sit down with John Arena and Brian Spangler, and we'll get like a new Yoda panel going so that we can really dig into a little bit of that. But what is it that you have noticed about the benefits of adding a little commercial yeast to a natural sourdough starter?
It's all textural. It's commercial yeast is such a vigorous gas producer that we get a better texture because we have better oven spring than you'll ever get with natural fermentation solely. And the I've obviously been studying bread making, and I take a lot of cues from French baguettes, and walking the streets of Paris and with a baguette in your hand and really understanding it just blew my mind. And baguettes and pizza dough are very, very similar.
They are
very similar.
And certainly the French take their baguette dough very seriously as well.
Very.
And by the way, you mentioned that bread, you make your own bread. Are you making the bread from the pizza dough, or are you doing a whole different dough for the breads?
Completely different.
You're making your bread and your butter at Razza, aren't you?
Yeah. And that all spurred from trying to understand pizza crust. So you study fermentation, and then you start fermenting everything. And we get grass-fed cow's cream from Pennsylvania. We inoculate it with an heirloom Scandinavian yogurt culture. It's very similar to the sourdough bread process, where we take a little bit of the old as the starter for the next batch, and then we churn the cream into butter. So we're making bread.
How many gallons of milk do you need to go through to make for a day's worth of butter?
We get the cream. So we actually work with a yogurt company. It's a small family farm. They milk the cows. They separate the cream from the milk. They sell us the cream, and then they make low-fat yogurt with their milk. Mm-hmm. And then we take the cream, we inoculate it, we chill it, we churn it. But we go through about 10 gallons every week or two.
That's phenomenal. So you've got, in addition to just running a pizza restaurant, you're doing all these extra things. You're making butter, you're making bread from a different dough, which means another dough mix that you're having to do. And then on top of that, you're coming up with all sorts of, I would say, I guess for lack of a better phrase, because it's a cliche now, a farm to table topping ideas. You got your standard, I guess, the pizzas that are always on the menu, and then an ever evolving maybe and changing group of pizzas that might be seasonal. Am I getting that right?
Yeah, totally. We have standard pizzas that are always going to be on the menu, like our pepperoni, the margarita, all those standards. And then we have the seasonals that are completely based on the ingredients that are available in our area. So now, today, we're getting the first asparagus of the year, which I'm really excited about. Yeah. And we'll start doing our spring pizzas. And then once asparagus season is over, or once the asparagus gets to the point where it's no longer incredible, something else will be available. Usually it's baby zucchini are next. So then we do our zucchini pizza with zucchini, a little bit of lemon, some ricotta cheese. But it follows the natural seasonality of our location, and we happen to be in New Jersey.
And you're making your own butter. Are you also making some of your own cheese in addition to the cheese you buy?
Yeah, we make the mozzarella for our pizza, but cheese making is one of those things that it requires a lot of time and dedication and thought power. And sometimes
a lot of microorganisms floating around your restaurant as well that could affect that cheese.
Yeah, and there's only so much you can do without diluting your time, right?
Yeah.
Like I can make cheese, I can cure meats, I can do all those things, but are we going to do all of them really well? It's the same thing with milling my own flour. I don't mill my own flour because that's an art and science unto itself. And if I have to be worried about all of those variables that are impacting the flour,
Yeah.
then I'm not going to be able to have enough time and energy to
Right.
to dial in what we do really well.
And you did that already. You've been there and done that way at the
Yeah.
beginning. So it's time you're moving on. You can only, like you say, you have to pick your battles,
Yeah.
especially in small operators. How many pizzas a night are you producing?
About 300. So it's
300.
not,
That's
yeah,
not small. Yeah. So 300 pizzas. So but it's a lot of pizzas in a small place, in a small
yeah,
location. How many
with
ovens?
one oven.
Just one oven.
Yeah.
Wow. And now, given the crisis that we're in with the COVID, that you've gone to mainly just in totally a curbside pickup
Yeah.
approach, right? So
Yeah.
how do people get in on that? Do they have a particular pickup time that they have to come by a window that they need to meet in order to have the
We,
pizza be fresh right out of the oven?
so we take orders. It's online ordering only. It's completely contactless. There's no exchange of money or anything. We open up our window and we take a pizza peel with the box on it and shove it out our window, and people take it. It's
Wow.
incredible. We could do this for a while.
Yeah.
Um,
And your volume is the same as it was when you were open for sit down.
yeah, the only thing we're lacking is the bar, the alcohol sales.
Well, that's
So our
right.
sales are like
And what
majorly
about
down, but
what about all the starters that you were serving? You have all those wonderful fresh seasonal starting courses and the octopus and everything, and the meatballs and everything. You still doing any of those?
a little bit, yeah. And because we don't have guests in our dining room, we have more prep space now. So we're prepping in the dining room, and we're actually getting really creative and doing things that we're not normally able to do.
Amazing how resilient and resourceful all these restaurant operators are becoming, and I'm beginning to wonder if we ever do return to some kind of a normal that we recognize, how many of these new breakthroughs that people have made will stay, and maybe we won't go back to the original model, but continue down these new sort of breakthrough ideas.
Yeah, I've always loved the takeout aspect of pizza, and it the product definitely changes
Yeah,
as soon as you put it in a box. But you know, these are crazy times, and we're just pivoting and
yeah.
making sure that we still have a restaurant once this is all over.
Well, Dan, you and I think could talk about this for about the next 6 hours, and I'd love to set up another time. We'll do another session and another episode of Pizza Talk with you, because I want to keep digging in deep and get into your mind and into your creative process. But we want to get you back soon, also to sit down with our other pizza yodis, and we'll talk really focus in again on tinkering with your dough, and maybe you can share some of the knowledge and wisdom that you've gained over these last 15 years or so, as you've learned through, I'm sure, learned as much from failing as you have through your successes. And maybe hear a little bit about some of your what would you call them, the outtakes, so to speak.
I've learned way more through failure.
Well, that's it, I think, and that's something that John Arena and Brian Spangler both have told us. Everyone says that, because we all
Yeah.
know that's true. It goes without saying, you can't be successful if you haven't had a few failures as well. But anyway, we've got a lot more to talk about with you over time, and we look forward to having you be a part of our Pizza Quest journey and the Pizza Talk series that we're creating now. And thank you so much for being part of today. Any final words that you want? Any parting shots you'd like to have to share with our viewers?
Oh, thank you so much. I can't tell you how much it means to be talking to you. I love it.
Well, we appreciate what you're doing, and I feel like you're part of a small group of people who are really moving the bar, and raising the bar, so that people who aspire to greatness, have a blueprint to follow. You're kind of one of those people creating your own blueprint, and I do want to talk more with you later about the 40 points of your blueprint, and how that has evolved and grown, and if there are more points to come still in the future as you.
Definitely.
Dan Richer, Razza, and Jersey City, New Jersey. Can't wait till I can get on a plane again one of these days and fly up there and sit down and do this in person with you, and bring our whole team, the Pizza Quest team, over there to film you in action. But we'll talk
Love it.
again soon. Dan, thanks so much.
Thank you.